Today in cybersecurity news, listen at any speed you like. InfoSectors think attackers backed by China are behind Ivanti zero-day exploits. Customers currently left patchless while attacks are expected to increase. Connor Jones, Thursday, January 11th, 2024. 15:06 UTC. Security experts believe Chinese nation-state attackers are actively exploiting two zero-day vulnerabilities in security products made by Ivanti. If you're an admin or a user of the two products affected, VPN service Ivanti Connect Secure, ICS and Network Access Control Toolkit Policy Secure, you should immediately apply the current workaround in Ivanti's security update. The U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, warned last night. ICS is used widely in enterprises and governments, and more victims are likely to surface now the vulnerabilities have been disclosed, according security researcher Kevin Beaumont. Successful exploitation allows for code execution after bypassing authentication, including MFA, and the vulnerabilities affect all supported versions, Ivanti said. Ivanti believes fewer than 10 victims have been successfully attacked thus far, but according to a shot-in scan by Beaumont, the number of vulnerable gateways exposed to the internet is just north of 15,000. Ivanti is still developing patches, although the mitigation is available here. Researchers at Velexity disclosed the findings from an investigation into a customer believed to be one of the victims successfully targeted by attacks chaining 20 days in Ivanti Connect Secure, ICS and Policy Secure gateways. While exploitation volume appears currently low, the disclosure of the two vulnerabilities means there is always the likelihood of attackers targeting organizations and must now they know who and what to target. When combined, these two vulnerabilities make it trivial for attackers to run commands on the system. Blogged Velexity researchers Matthew Meltzer, Robert Jen Mora, Sean Kosel, Stephen Adair, and Thomas Lancaster. In one particular incident, the attacker leveraged these exploits to steal configuration data, modify existing files, download remote files, and reverse tunnel from the ICS VPN appliance. Velexity observed the attacker modifying legitimate ICS components and making changes to the system to evade the ICS Integrity Checker tool, ICT. Notably, Velexity observed the attacker backdooring a legitimate CGI file, ComCheck CGI, on the ICS VPN appliance to allow command execution. The attackers also extracted user credentials by modifying a JavaScript file used by the WebSSL VPN component of ICS, allowing them to keylog user logins. The credentials were then used by the attackers to gain access to other systems on the network, leading to an extensive compromise. The two vulnerabilities and potential exposure. The two vulnerabilities were initially exploited in a short chain by the attackers. An unknown group Velexity tracks as UTA0178. See below for Ivanti's description of the two issues, CVE 2023-46805, 8.2 severity score high. An authentication bypass vulnerability in the web component of ICS, 9x22x. And Ivanti Policy Secure allows a remote attacker to access restricted resources by bypassing control checks CVE 2024-21887, 9.1 severity score critical, a command injection vulnerability in web component of ICS, 9x22x. And Ivanti Policy Secure allows an authenticated administrator to send specially crafted requests and execute arbitrary commands on the appliance. This vulnerability can be exploited over the internet, underlining the severity of the exploits. CISA swiftly added the two vulnerabilities to its known exploited vulnerability, KEV, catalog, mandating all federal civilian executive branch, FCEB, agencies to apply the patches within 3 weeks. Ivanti's patches and mitigations. Ivanti is currently working on patches, but due to its strict staggered schedule, some may not be released until February. The first batch is expected to drop in the week commencing January 22nd, with the last expected in the week starting February 19th. Patches won't be released in version order either. The company said it's using its own telemetry to develop patches for the most installed versions first, continuing in descending order of user numbers. Regarding its staggered schedule, Ivanti said its focus is to get patches out to customers as quickly as possible, but to ensure a high quality of each release, a staggered schedule is required. In the meantime, customers are encouraged to apply the mitigation for both vulnerabilities, which involves importing the mitigation release 20,240,107.1 XML file via the customer download portal. We have seen evidence of threat actors attempting to manipulate Ivanti's internal integrity checker, ICT, it said in a detailed advisory. Out of an abundance of caution, we are recommending that all customers run the external ICT. We have added new functionality to the external ICT that will be incorporated into the internal ICT in the future. We regularly provide updates to the external and internal ICT, so customers should always ensure they are running the latest version of each. The ICT is a snapshot of the current state of the appliance and cannot necessarily detect threat actor activity if they have returned the appliance to a clean state. The ICT does not scan for malware or other indicators of compromise, IOCs. We recommend as a best practice for customers to always run the ICT in conjunction with continuous monitoring. Full details about the patch, the available mitigation, and IOCs can be found in Ivanti's advisory. Velexity recommends 3 primary methods for detecting malicious activity on organizations' networks: network traffic analysis, VPN device log analysis, and using Ivanti's ICT tool. However, web requests associated with the exploits won't appear in the VPN device logs, meaning these alone won't be able to indicate whether a server is compromised. Attackers were also spotted deleting logs as they went, which itself could indicate a potential compromise. Who's behind the attacks? Very little is known about UTA-0178. Researchers believe it is a nation-state operation running out of China. Neither Ivanti nor Velexity have suggested the apparent motives of the attackers. Aside from stealing credentials to hop between victim systems, the primary goal of this activity appeared to be reconnaissance and exploration, Velexity said. Attackers were mainly observed sifting through user and configuration files and testing access to systems. If the China nexus of the attacks is genuine, the country's actions in cyberspace have traditionally been focused on espionage and the theft of intellectual property, though it is widely believed it has the capability to launch highly disruptive attacks. This is still the case in 2024, according to Microsoft's most recent digital defense report, which explains that China primarily targets governments, corporations, and defense and critical infrastructure organizations to collect intelligence. Those targets are set on the US and nations in the South China Sea, such as Taiwan and the Philippines, and their strategic partners such as Malaysia, Indonesia, and Kazakhstan. Uncle Sam tells hospitals, meet security standards or no federal dollars for you. Expect new rules in upcoming weeks. Jessica Leone Hardcastle, Wednesday, January 10, 2024. 2032 UDC U.S. hospitals will be required to meet basic cybersecurity standards before receiving federal funding, according to rules the White House is expected to propose in the next few weeks. This comes as hospitals and health clinics nationwide continue to be menaced by ransomware, and cybercrimes resort to diabolical tactics to make victims pay up. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, an arm of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, is reportedly drawing up rules connecting hospital IT security with funding, which are set to take effect before the end of the year, citing an unnamed government official. This messenger report says the proposed rules will focus on those key cybersecurity practices that we really do believe bring a meaningful impact, and federal funding will hinge on hospitals enacting these basic network defenses. When asked about the draft rules, a CMS spokesperson directed the Register to a concept paper published in December that outlines the Department of Health and Human Services HHS cybersecurity strategy. According to the HHS paper PDF, officials will propose new enforceable security standards, and will work with Congress to administer financial support and incentives for hospitals to implement high-impact cybersecurity practices, among other actions. One of the key action areas is increasing accountability and coordination within the healthcare sector, the spokesperson told the Register. CMS values feedback from stakeholders and continues to consider how to improve cybersecurity most effectively across the healthcare sector. CMS does not comment on the substance of policies before they are proposed. Last year alone, at least 46 U.S. hospital corporations with a total of 141 facilities between them were hit by ransomware infections, and at least 32 of these networks had protected health information and other patient data stolen during the intrusions, according to Emsisoft. For comparison, there were 25 of these affected hospital systems in 2022, the InfoSec Biz says. In addition to stealing hospitals' data, criminals are also using increasingly nasty extortion tactics to put pressure on healthcare execs to pay ransoms. This includes emailing patients directly and threatening to sell their health records, leaking breast cancer patients' nudes, and even threatening to swat hospital patients. And while no one is going to argue against improving hospitals' security posture, cutting off their funding may not help the situation, according to some. Denying funding to hospitals doesn't seem like the best way to help them improve their security, Emsisoft threat analyst Brett Callow told the Register. In fact, it may do the exact opposite. The Register's journalists debated the issue in this week's Kettle recording. Thanks for listening. Check back later for more cybersecurity news and updates.